Welcome to Helping Organizations Thrive. Today, I have the great pleasure of Gauri Das. Welcome, Gauri.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me here. I'm looking forward to a great conversation this evening.
Brilliant, and it is your evening. You're all the way in Mumbai, and so there's 5.5 hours between us, which is great, and I appreciate your time. I'm just going to let the audience know a little bit about you before we get into a conversation. So you're the vice president and head of HR of India Factoring and Finance Solutions. You're a speaker, a mentor. You are HR 100 under 40, which is great. And I love this about you. You have a mantra, which is your passion with compassion. And so that's really important. So thank you for coming on. And I'm sure we will see and feel and hear your passion along with your compassion. So this is what I always ask everybody who comes on, and because I'm just quite nosy, really, is what do you love about what you do?
It's an interesting question, and we should always love what we do. So, like you mentioned, what all I do. So, one is I am a HR professional, and HR always keeps giving you loads of challenges because one side you are dealing with those archaic labor laws, legislations, compliances, and on the other side you have to jump into technology and employee experience and then coaching people, so right from doing the most mundane task till you have the most stimulating ones. So it keeps me like keep spinning a lot of plates and none should drop. And at the same time, the most important assets of the organization should be taken care of. So it always keeps me on toes. That is why. Then I'm mentoring student because I strongly believe that if I can give forward, pay forward because somebody has trained me as well, somebody has mentored me as well, so I should definitely do that. Then I'm also supporting women empowerment. I have a group of people, group of women. It's called as Leaders Lifting Leaders, and we are there together to uplift each other. So we come together, we learn with each other, we grow with each other. So these are the things, and then speaking because I want my message to reach everyone, and I want people to learn from whatever mistakes I have done, whatever I have learned in my life, and that's why I love to write also and speak as well.
Brilliant. And I'm just interested really to what was it about HR that wanted you to pursue a career in it?
Yeah, so I'm basically an engineer, a computer engineer. And when I was studying my engineering, I realized that I am not made to sit with machines. I should actually come out and I should actually interact with people. So that's where I started my career in HR. And Dave Ulrich was writing modern HR at that point of time. And that's where I got interested into it because it was changing in India from being a personnel management to human resources. And the H of HR really attracts me because you just mentioned my mantra is passion with compassion. So
Mm.
I'm business driven and people focused.
Brilliant. That's really good. I like that one. Interesting background to bring that engineering aspect as well within in the HR sort of context. Um, I've been talking to a lot of people recently about employer engagement and culture of businesses, and it's always been there. It's not been a surprise, but I think it's got even more prevalent in terms of raising its profile within the last 12 months with all what we've been facing as businesses. And we know that it's really valuable that people are engaged. Now, you know, back in the day, I think there's always a view that, you know, the responsibility of employee engagement always sat with HR. And I'm not saying HR don't initiate and don't act upon in terms of spearheading it, but I just want to get your thoughts on, you know, what is the role of leadership on a wider context of creating that sort of culture, that sort of way that employees will engage in a great way.
Yeah, so very pertinent question, and especially in today's time, it's really important to understand engagement because the definition of engagement has changed. And you rightly pointed because it's all about leaders. So, role of HR is to create that environment, enable them to engage with people. Because one or I mean, you would generally see a ratio of 100 or 150. one HR for these many numbers. So HR cannot go out and really engage with people one on one all the time. But they can give right tools to leadership so that they start engaging. So if we look at this pandemic, the best practices that I have seen in terms of engagement is number one, having this thought in mind that employee is a human being and you
Mm.
have to treat them with empathy. So, empathy, compassion has come out as number one important competency for leadership, and they need to really understand this. So, when pandemic hit and people were like not knowing what to do, how to manage things, if
Mm.
we all saw the role that HR played, and HR came forward and supported them with a lot of tools in terms of technology, wherein productivity can be measured, but at the same time the right human touch was need of the hour, and that's what's
Mm.
done by the HR. So I always think that there are three H based on which we work. So one is head, you create strategies there. Then there is a heart, where you connect with people, you share your vision with them, and
Mm.
finally hand which executes. So leaders need to
Mm.
understand all three H and create their engagement strategy, engagement platforms like that. Most important thing is communication after empathy,
Mm.
because in difficult times people don't know what to do, where to go, and if you can communicate and communicate,
Mm.
you will be definitely having their heart with you, and you will be definitely having their hands as well. So execution of the strategy becomes very easy. Empowerment is another thing. If you empower people, you don't micromanage, they
Mm.
will do much more than what is required. So I think these
Mm.
are some of the strategies which are definitely giving good results when it comes to engaging people.
Yeah, no, and I think you made a load of ton of stuff there, which I think was really interesting. And I was just making some notes. That's what I was looking away, writing things down, because I think you got some interesting points. And just starting with that empathy side of things, I suppose first question for me: how do you bring that sense of priority to engagements in the business? How do you get leaders to appreciate that engagement's really valuable and really important? I mean, have you done that yourself, or in previously, or what you've observed in other HR leaders who've brought it to the table? What sort of things have you been doing?
Yes, so my personal strategy is bring up some data to it and bring up practices which competitors are doing. Because if you just go and tell them that engagement is important, nobody is going to listen to you.
Mm.
So you have to look at the numbers that are really helping, and some of the numbers that really define it are net promoter score, whether employees are actually referring when there is a vacancy, if they are coming forward and bringing in their friends, their family to the organization.
Mm.
Number two is your engagement scores. If it is anonymous, it definitely gives you a lot of insight into it. And third is kind of sick leaves numbers. If there is
Okay.
lot of if there is a lot of sick leave taken, there is actually sickness in the system. So that's another area which can help us understand. Attrition numbers are definitely a good indicator. So when you put everything together and you put people's voice along with it,
Mm.
leaders do listen to you. And definitely the best practices or practices which are part of competitors, you have to understand your competitors. If they are doing something which is extraordinary and
Mm.
you are nowhere there, people would not be happy being with you. So I do bring up these best practices and data to convince leaders that you really need engagement. And thanks to social media, there is already some awareness that people would not stick around unless you really take care of employee experience. So
Mm.
EX has become an important ingredient these days.
And it's also there's the whole benefit of creating that employer experience, employer engagements, because what tends to happen is not only do you retain staff, which is obviously fantastic, because losing staff and recruiting is cost money, but also productivity, innovation, all those benefits that come with an employed, an engaged sort of workforce. And you said start with empathy, and I think that's a good place to start, which is just to be people focused and to get that sense of the human side of things and start to value people in that way. And again, how do we create that sort of, I suppose, culture or a mindset of empathy within an organization?
Yeah, so creating culture, I think, is loads of responsibility on senior management because it's a top-down approach. Definitely, you have to have buy-in from everyone, but the responsibility lies with leadership. So if you are speaking with your team, say CEO or MD, they are speaking with their team, and the statement or starts with "How are you? How's your family?" Then it definitely sets the right culture. Second, if there's someone not well in office and he or she is given that freedom to be with themselves, you
Mm,
are setting the right culture. You set the right culture when you bring in those policies which are not only taking care about your physical health but overall well-being. And
mm,
I strongly believe in those 8 dimensions of well-being. It's not
mm,
only physical but spiritual also, but social also, emotional, financial. So when
mm,
organizations are supporting their people with these things, their policies are around it. So it's a very simple example. If you have overtime policy and
mm,
you are attaching it to donuts in your canteen, then you are definitely indicating that this is not wellness is not our culture. But if you have leave, which is called as wellness leave, no question asked, you are creating trust and you are creating that culture where
mm.
empathy, where well being is taken care of. So I think it's all about having the right policies, but
Yeah.
not only policies, not only lip service, but also setting the right example. Can your manager come forward and say that today my wife is not well or my husband is not well and I would
Mm,
not be taking a call? Because that would give them the right message that you have this freedom that if you are not well, can be home. You are not required to work that day. Otherwise, even if somebody is on sick leave, people keep calling them. This is not the right thing. So I think the onus
mm.
is on leadership, and these are some of the strategies which can be used to create that empathetic culture.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You mentioned sort of trust, and I suppose almost creating that psychological safety where people feel it's okay to speak up, okay to share what they're doing, but also feel that they're trusted to do something, which then obviously creates a sense of value and they're not being micromanaged. And we know that, a lot of organizations now have, shifted from the office through to a home working or some sort of hybrid, depending on what country you're in and what business you're in, and has forced the issue of trust in that context where people have to force people to go home and they have to sort of trust to get on with the work. And we know that sort of productivity has gone up, but I also sense, and I've spoken to a number of people where people are probably working harder and are actually working harder than they would do in the office, because in the office they would have that little interaction, getting a coffee, walking around the office, and at home people are just sitting at their laptops feeling they have to keep working. And I guess, how do we create, and we can't create the office at home, but how do we create a culture where people feel they can sort of take some time out and, literally go off for a walk without feeling chained to that, I guess, desk? And I think that although its productivity's gone up and efficiency, I think for me, people are working and potentially on a road to sort of burnout. So how can we sort of create that sense of empowerment, I guess?
Yeah, so I think it's a very important aspect that we treat people for long term. We just don't see that today they can operate from home and they can be there for 14 hours. So we make them work for 14 hours every day. No, that's not the right thing. And I think trust again plays a very important role here. If you trust them, you would not be keep checking whether you are
Mm,
working, whether you are taking a walk or you are at your desk. You would not be installing those softwares which will tell you whether the person is logged in or not. So, and empowerment and kind of not micromanaging is critical. But at the same time, I think setting the right example again here would help. If you see, but there are two aspects to it as well. Say there can be some employees who have very young kids, and the kids are awake during the day, so they can't operate during the day. Can you give them freedom to operate from say 10 p.m. at night till 7 a.m. in the morning?
Mm.
Because this is the time when their kids are sleeping, and that's when they can be fully productive. But give them the whole day, they will not operate because you need your results by say by 10 a.m. in the morning or 9 a.m. in the morning. Why
Mm.
can't you allow them to operate with this flexibility? That is one. Second, if senior leaders come forward and say that there will not be any emails or there will, because some organizations have this policy that any email which is sent after 6 p.m. on Friday and 9 a.m. On Monday will be deleted automatically. So if you do such things,
Wow.
then definitely the right culture, right the
So
things
is
are.
that's an interesting policy? Is that, are you aware of a policy like that? Literally deleting things after 6 on a Friday.
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a very interesting policy that I read about. One of my friends shared this. It's in her company, and it's amazing. I mean, anybody writing an email, nobody is responsible for it after 6 p.m. on Sunday. There are people during when they were working from office, they will take a round after 6 p.m. and check out who is in office and what are they doing there, rather than putting a benchmark that until I leave as a leader, you should not leave.
Mm.
So, what kind of culture are you creating? What kind of practices you are setting? It's all depends on these things. So, this is on part of employer or this is on part of leaders what they can do. But I
Mm.
think even employees have to play a very important role here. They have to set up their calendar and they have to set up their day also. So, for
Mm.
example, early in the morning, if you used to walk for your workplace, you should keep the same routine so your mind get conditioned. Okay, I'm starting my day now, and
Mm.
when you end your day again, you do some routine, some ritual which indicates that it's end of the day.
Mm.
And then be productive. Don't be on Netflix when you are just because you are home. So you have to be productive so that you are done within those many hours. So,
Mm.
and if there are distractions, then you have to take care of them or request for a different flexible times, whatever. And be
Mm.
there. It should not happen that you are not responsive. Your manager is calling you and or you are not responding. Then that trust gets broken. So
Mm.
I think if both sides come together and they work together, the overall culture, overall productivity will continue to improve. Otherwise, you
Mm.
rightly pointed, soon we will have a time when people will be totally burnt out and this productivity level will start getting down rather
Mm.
than maintaining or going up. And interestingly, I read some data where some organizations have already started saying that productivity is going down and they want people to be back in office so that they can be productive.
Wow. Yeah, and it's interesting the whole creating that routine again, where people have not done the commute anymore, and now actually saying to them, go and do a 30-minute walk or whatever, if your commute was 30 minutes, to try and create that routine, and take some time out at lunch to just go for a walk or sit down with your family to try and almost mimic what you were doing in the work context. And I think it's giving people permission, isn't it, to say to them, this is the work I'd like you to get done. How you do it,
Yes,
as long as at times we can have touch points, you got permission to
absolutely.
go off and get away and flex around it. And I think it's that sense. And I really like that point about, as leaders, it all comes down to examples. I mean, the email thing on the Friday and the Monday where they literally don't get sent is an interesting one, because it sets a message of, we don't want you working at the weekends. And I think it's leaders need to be role models where they're not sending things late at night as well during the week. So then people think that's the expectation is to do that. And actually more of that checking on people and saying, almost saying to you, why did you work till 7 o'clock last night? Why did you need to do that? Have you got enough resource? Have you got enough time? There's other things going on. As long as there's flexibility going on, that's fine. But that wandering around the office normally, at 6 o'clock, instead of waiting for me to go, I was telling people to, why you're here. I like that. I really
Yeah.
like that approach. That's interesting. So, going forward, how do you think, as people start to do a mix of, office, home, and all various hybrids going along, how do we sort of create, I suppose, a sustainable view and pattern of employer engagements in still these quite challenging times?
Yeah, I think one is definitely empowerment, because that's what is going to support both sides. Like you rightly pointed this example that this is to be done. How you do it, it doesn't matter. When you do it, doesn't matter. But
Mm,
before that deadline, it should be available. So that is one of the most important thing. I think the thrust should be more on that trust factor. Can your do your people have your back, or you just leave them when there is a challenge? So that trust and that empowerment will go hand in hand, and it will definitely create a right workplace.
mm,
Second is engagement. So definitely you can't go out for dinners with them, but you can have a Zoom call with them. You can sit with them for a lunch, or for like get together kind of thing, where you can involve in families, because this
mm,
is the time when you can involve families in everything. And you it's not, because when you do it physically in office, every time you are not able to invite families, it's not feasible. But here,
mm,
whatever you are doing, whichever way the events that you are doing, you can engage with them. So one-to-one calls, calls with families, calls with the whole team,
mm,
those are critical. And whenever you are in office, make sure that your team is there, because in hybrid model, at least 2 times a week you will be in office.
mm,
So take full advantage of it and just be with them as a human being, not as a manager, because they see you now only once in a month, or once or twice in a month. So
mm,
it's more important to show that human side rather than that managerial side, because people are responsible. And as we know,
mm,
productivity improved means people are really responsible. Otherwise, productivity wouldn't have improved from home. And most important is mindset change. So this restriction that we put in our mind, that from home it's just a holiday, it's not work, that we will have to totally remove, and we will have to have this growth mindset that it is possible
mm.
to have better results while people are at home, they are relaxed. So these would be some of the areas that I would think people should focus on.
Yeah, and I think also that it's interesting to mention that mindset, working from home, and unfortunately work has come home now. We literally work from home. It's a thing we do. It's all around the world, and our lives now are completely intertwined. I mean, there's not that people completely switched off when they left work, but some people did. Now you're working in your home, and as much as there's a flexibility, fluidity with all that, and people are more relaxed about noise and kids in the background and dogs and cats, all that sort of stuff, I think there's a potential concern that people are just going to go into this works all the time. It feels like, because it's always in their room, in their bedroom, or wherever, or their office. And I guess it's what other, I suppose, well-being things are you thinking as a HR professional to help that, and also this whole plan to come back in some form of hybrid? What do you think are the challenges that you have to think about for that?
Yeah, thanks for bringing up well-being, because without that we will not be able to survive, I would say. And we really realized in during these difficult times that well-being is not only about going to gym or eating the right food, but it is
Mm,
also about our mind, that emotional well-being, that spiritual well-being, that well-being which is all about our purpose, our occupation. It is about social well-being, that water cooler discussion that
mm,
refreshes you. Why? Because you are able to connect with those people. So in order to develop that connect, yes, we will have to put in extra efforts. Technology would help here, and more engagement, though e-engagement, it is going to be order of the day now,
mm.
because we will never have the same situation back where people were everybody was operating from office every day. That may not happen, may not be possible for quite some time. So well-being should be agenda on organizations policy, because that will define business continuity. It's
Mm,
not about only employee experience anymore. It's about surviving your business. And that's where HBR says that there will be a position, there are already positions and there will be much more in future, which will
mm,
be well-being director. This role would take care of overall organization's well-being so that business doesn't stop.
mm,
There were instances during COVID times when whole team got infected at one point of time, and you had no way to come out of this situation. So
mm.
let's not enter that zone. We are already stressed a lot mentally. So let's support people in terms of well-being. That's a very important agenda.
Yeah, and I think that's where well-being, another thing that needs to be, it's not just the fruits and the gym passes or
Yes.
those sort of, I suppose, tactical things. It is more about embedding something in the mindset. And I know I was talking to one organization where I think they created sort of a sort of buddying up with individuals. You buddied up with somebody and they try to create a little bit of accountability, not so much with your manager, somebody as a peer,
Okay.
and you just watch out for each other. You would just ask questions and build a rapport, and it was quite good because you built a friendship, but also somebody who was a bit closer to you that could ask things. And obviously, as a manager or a leader, you'd ask those questions as well. But it was just creating a bit of a buddy system, and I think that was quite a nice social, helpful interaction, just sort of accountability, I guess. Um,
Yeah, that's
so
an excellent way.
yeah, so again, just any sort of last thoughts as we, look out on 2021, of what else we could be doing to help us be more engaging or leading in a way that really does make people's well-being matter at the center of the organizations. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think today, if you have to look at as a leader, there are a few S that is in minds of people. So one is security. Is job security? Is my job going to remain or not? Because the danger is not fully over as yet. We are still struggling. Organization would be mostly in phase of rewind or reboot because progress, I mean, expansion is still far away, and more and more cases like now there is a second wave, third wave also. So one is security, second is safety. Can you give them a safe workplace wherever you have to call them to
Mm,
office, or even if they are home, are you really supporting them with a lot of things like employee assistant programs? Can you support them with yoga classes, meditation classes? So these are some of the things which would really define the second S. And third S is skilling, because this particular pandemic has accelerated
mm,
digitization to a larger extent. And people are now, there are a lot of things which have been digitized, and don't need people for that. So, can you develop that kind of reskilling, upskilling into people's mind?
mm,
First, the mindset, and then you will be teaching them the skills. So those three S, I think, are critical for our survival for next few years. And the skilling part, especially, is going to be very important. And both employee and employer have to work together. Because if you don't have a growth mindset, then you will not be able to learn new things. You will not even be able to appreciate that this is gone now.
mm.
What I was hiring for, the skills that I was hiring for 3 years ago, I'm not hiring for them anymore because skills have changed now.
Yes.
So reskilling, upskilling is another area. So these three S, I think this would define the
Mm,
overall employee experience and overall culture.
yeah.
Everything lies there.
Brilliant. And I think that you made a valuable point about the skilling and sort of developing people. As you say, in 2 or 3 years' times, certain jobs won't even exist.
Yes.
And people need to have opportunities to either upskill or change their job within the context of an organization. And a real investment needs to be had to help people do that. And we know that not only by doing that, it does a wonderful thing for employee engagement. It is a great thing for making people feel valued because you're investing in supporting them, in training them, or whatever else you might be doing with that. And I think that's a really good way. And I know a lot of organizations I work with that, bring in a sense of sort of leadership, sort of training, or whatever it may be.
Yes.
Actually, that does an awful lot for that engagement and retention and sort of motivation as well. So that's really important. I really appreciate your insights today and thoughts. I just yeah, thank you for coming on. But I just want to ask, if people want to get in touch with you, connect with you, what's the best way of doing that with you?
LinkedIn is the best.
Brilliant. LinkedIn. We are on LinkedIn right now as well, amongst other places. So no, thank you for your time today. And thank you for today.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much.